So these are the various functionalities. See, the letters here will be little distorted. Whatever I am writing, because of this software, it gets distorted. Okay, so this introduction part is over. What we started yesterday. Now, as far as the Earth satellite is concerned, so already we have divided into many parts according to its applications. But another division it comes because of the low Earth orbit satellite. The geostationary. Another one is the Molania. Molania. So geostationary satellite, as you know, the time period is the same as that of the Earth. So Earth rotates on its axis and how much time? Once. Anybody? Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
The Earth rotates on its axis. How much time it takes?
24 hours.
On its axis, it rotates in 23 hours, 56 minutes. It's a 4 minutes less. And accordingly, you can set the geostationary satellite time period and the altitude will be fixed. So approximately we take it as 24 hours and while doing the calculation, but in exact calculation we have to take 23 hours 56 minutes. So this is the rotation on its axis in what constitutes one day. If it is 24 hours, then the problem lies here. This is your Earth. It's tilted like this on the axis. This axis is tilted 23.5 degree approximately and Sun is here. Okay, so as it goes in the orbit, so say this is your daytime. So while it comes here in this place and it maintains the same rotation rate, so this part will be 12 hours away. Yet this will become night at the same time. Because of this maintaining 23 hours 56 minutes, then this side falls here on this side. It's a very synchronized. You can count the 4 minutes into 6 months around. So 6 months into 30 days. So how much it makes? 4 minutes, 6 into 30. And divided by 60. So this comes around to 12 hours. So this is the 12 hours difference. So this is not exactly 24 hours. If it is 24 hours, the things will be very different. Okay, so geostationary satellite, whose altitude you know around 36,000 kilometers or distance from the center of the Earth 42,000 kilometers around. I am telling you the approximate distance, this is not the exact. Low Earth orbit, which ranges from 300 kilometers to 1,000 kilometers. Okay, this Molania series of satellite, this is the Russian satellite. What happens that when you are looking for geostationary orbit, So this is the Earth. See, I have drawn a circle, and this is appearing as an ellipse on the screen. So this will be the distortion. It's a software problem associated here. So if my writing is not legible, then you can ask me wherever you have doubt or confusion. So in the case of India, India is lying in the northern hemisphere, and somewhere Sriharikota is lying here. So it's close to the equator. So once you launch a satellite, so if it is here in the say, and this is the equatorial plane of the Earth. So your satellite is here with 24 hours orbit around. This is not 24 hours exactly, but 23 hours and 56 minutes. So you will have visibility of the whole India here from the geostationary satellite. Geostationary satellite, it is here, it can cover this much of range for communication purpose. So whole India, it comes here within this range. But for spying, it cannot be used. For spying, you have to use a lower orbit because you need the optical resolution, and from this much of altitude, optical resolution will not come. And therefore, spying the low Earth orbit or the remote sensing, all these are the low Earth orbit satellites. Now, in the case of Rasa, Rasa is lying somewhere here in this region, quite toward the north. Okay. And for suppose this tangent turns out to be here, and this tangent is here in this place. So beyond range, beyond this range, in this range, no satellite visibility will be there. Okay. And therefore, what they have done that instead of using this kind of satellite, they will use a highly elliptical orbit. An orbit which will be very highly elliptical. Say here on this side 500 kilometers. On another side it may be appearing, approaching the geostationary orbit, so that the satellite remains within the visibility range for most of the time. Only for a small period of time it will be invisible. So if you put two satellites properly synchronized, proper timing, so most of the time your communication can take place. And that comes in the Molniya series of satellites, which are put in the highly elliptical orbit. Now from here we come to the geostationary we have discussed. It's a 24 hours and it's equatorial orbit. Equatorial orbit and 23 hours 56 minutes. And circular orbit. So this constitutes your geostationary orbit. Now there is another term which is the geosynchronous orbit. So the geosynchronous orbit, this is, it can arise from for various reasons. Like one is elliptical, 23 hours 56 minutes orbit. in the equatorial plane. Okay, in this case, what will happen that instead of, if this is your Earth and satellite is here, but now it's not in purely circular orbit, but it's a little elliptical. On this side it's more, and this side say it's less. So here in this case, your satellite will not be overhead. Here in this case, this will be always overhead because it has exactly the same period as that of the Earth. If artificially, if a pole can be raised from this place to this place, and a satellite can be put here in this place, and suppose the gravity and other issues are not there, you can see that as the Earth rotates, along with the Earth, it will rotate and it will always remain over your head. But in the case it is in elliptical orbit, so here it's moving fast, here it is moving slow. And because the period is 23 hours 56 minutes, so the semi-major axis A of the ellipse, semi-major axis, A is the semi-major axis of the ellipse. So this will be the same as the time period of the orbit of any satellite. It can be written as 2 pi times q divided by mu on the square root. Okay, so A here appears as the semi-major axis, and mu is the universal gravitational constant multiplied by mass of the Earth. So here in this case, you have the same period according to this rule. So A is nothing but your equal to r geostationary. Radius of the orbit, which is the circular here in this case for the geostationary orbit, A will be equal to that. So what the difference is? The difference is that here on this side it will be shorter and this side it will be longer. Means if r falls to be, suppose the r is here lying somewhere here in this place. Okay, so your orbit will be little extending beyond this. And because of that, it slows down here from conservation of angular momentum, and here it is faster. So for that reason, if you are here on the equator, so this satellite will drift ahead and backward. East and west drift will be there. So for the geosynchronous satellite, let's say east-west drift will be observed. Now in the case we have little inclined orbit. This is the equator, and the orbit is not like this, but orbit is little inclined. It's like this, and it's a circular orbit here. And period is the same, 23 hours 56 minutes. So here also you will have east-west drift, and in addition, north-south drift also will be. And your satellite, once you see from the ground here in this place, so your satellite will appear to make a figure of 8. And you can try to analyze yourself if it is not if it is not understandable how it's happening, so I will explain it in the next part. But for doing this, you can exaggerate the things. You can make the orbit little look like this. Take this kind of orbit. Okay, and then try to look that it will appear here in this. So for geosynchronous orbit, we are seeing that it will either, if it is in the equatorial plane, then we will have the east-west drift. If it is off the equatorial plane, then we can have also the northwest drift, and therefore it makes appears like a figure of 8. So this is your overhead. This point is overhead, and over this you will see that it's making a figure of 8. And if this orbit is also elliptical, so accordingly the things will further get distorted. Okay, so this is the basic about how the satellite works and various orbits that we use with the purposes and so on. Now we go to the Kepler's law. So Kepler proposed 3 laws of planetary motion, and 2 of them they appeared in Astronomia Nova, and one of them it appeared in. He was of a spiritual bent, and he was also a student of Tycho Brahe, and he was assisting him in various measurements of the planetary position. Okay, and from there, then he inferred. So he had a lot of data, and from there he inferred that the satellites, these planets are moving around the sun. It appears to move around the Earth, but actually it's moving around the sun. This is what he proposed. So this appeared in Harmonices, Mundi like this. The third law appeared here, and the first 2 appeared here in this. And Kepler's law, the first law, as we stated, the orbit of the planet around the sun is an ellipse, with sun at one of its focus. The orbit of this planet is an ellipse with sun at one of the focus of the orbit. That means if this is the orbit, Sun is located here and Earth is moving around this. And this is an ellipse. The line joining the planet to the Sun splits out equal areas in equal amount of time. That is, rate of shift of area is constant. And the third one is the square of the time period of planet is proportional to the cube of its mean distance to the Sun. And this already we have discussed, T equal to 2 pi d cube by mu. So if you square it, d cube by mu, so T square is proportional to d cube. Okay, so Kepler enunciated these three laws from the measurements he had, but why it was so, this was not clear. Until Newton came and then he worked out all the mathematics. So as we know, we have seen Newton's law, and it's attributed to Newton, but it so happens that these laws were existing much before that in Indian text. Okay, so in fact, the third law is the contribution of Newton, and that too not exactly, but because that exists in some other version in the Indian text. So what is the contribution of Newton? That he put it in terms of mathematics. This is his contribution. And in the Indian context, it all existed in terms of the slokas. In Sanskrit, we have slokas, so it was written in terms of that. But anyway, this is credited to Newton because all the scientific tests, it's of the modern scientific tests, it's originating from Europe. I hope everybody is connected.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So, now I will ask you a few questions. So what is Newton's first law? Who can tell me? Anybody?
Sir, the body stays in the state of motion or rest until upon acted by an observer force.
From your background, a lot of noise is coming, so your voice is not audible. Maybe law of inertia. What does that mean? Okay. Okay. So let's say continues in state of motion. One thing on this, we place upon by external force, isn't it? What is the second law?
So the rate of change of linear momentum is directly proportional to the force applied on it in the direction of motion.
Rate of change of
Linear momentum is directly proportional to the
linear momentum is proportional to the force applied, isn't it?
yes sir.
Okay.
In the direction of motion.
And the change takes place in the direction of the motion. And the third law is action and reaction. Third law is action and reaction what? Speak out.
Every force has an equal and opposite reaction.
Action and reactions are equal in magnitude but opposite in direction.
Opposite in direction.
In various ways it can be stated. But opposite in direction. Now we pick up this law first. So this usually you write as F is proportional to dp by dt, isn't it? This is what we do. Is it okay? Speak out. Are you there? Everybody there or?
Yes sir.
Yes, sir.
So F is proportional to dp by dt. Is it okay?
Yes sir.
Okay. So for constant mass, then you are writing this as d by dt ma, isn't it? And multiplied by some k here.
The MV.
So mv. This is what we write. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So F equal to k times mv, which you write as kma. And in the SI system, you choose the units such that for unit mass m equal to 1, the acceleration of 1 meter per second square is produced once the unit force is imposed on that. So 1 Newton force is imposed on this, then the unit acceleration is produced. So if you choose the units like this, then k turns out to be equal to 1. Now set F equal to 0. So this becomes mdv by dt equal to 0. And this implies v is a constant. Isn't it? Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, it may appear trivial to you, but I am going to ask you a question. Or the thing here is V is a constant if the force is not active. And the first law also is telling the same thing, isn't it? Until unless a force is impressed, so the state of motion does not change. Either it will be rest or it's moving with the same velocity. So you see the catch, both are the same. So these are the fine things. We often do mathematics. We often do things without understanding. We just take it for granted and then manipulate the things. But understanding of any subject, especially the physics, it's a very different. Why this is happening like this, it's a very important. So this simply implies that these two laws are enough. The first law is not required. because the first law anyway it's a contained in the second law. Okay, what I am telling you, is it okay? Nobody replies. Until unless
Yes, sir.
you,
Yes, sir.
I cannot see you because I have opened the screen and the camera is off and everything. So only once you respond, I will be able to interact. So where is the problem? The problem exists that the first law, this is basically, it defines an inertial frame. This law is valid, second law is valid only in an inertial frame. This is not valid in non-inertial frame. You cannot apply this law to an object in non-inertial frame. So you should apply the second law only once you have got an inertial frame. And this is what the first law is stating. The object continues in the state of rest or either in motion until unless impressed on by the external force. So this is the nature of the frame. In that it will happen. And if that frame is there, then this is applicable. So the first law, it defines the inertial frame and simultaneously it also defines inertia of the system. The inertia, it's because of the mass, but it is not the mass itself. So these are intricacies of the physics. But if you dip into it, you will learn it properly. Now the same way, you just look into the another issue, like minus into minus, this you take as plus. This you take it for granted, but what is the region? Why minus into plus is minus and plus into plus is plus? It is very simple. This is from your 7th class. This you have done in the 10th class, or even earlier, 9th class, the Newton's law. And this belongs to your 7th class. But mostly the problem is that we are not worried about the things. We just pick up the things, knock it up, and finish the thing. And this is the point where we lack. Okay, so I hope you are aware of the mechanics part. So I will not go into the mechanics, basic of things required for this course. And then conic section also, because you have already done geometry in your 12th class. Right now conic section I will not do. And I will take up whenever this is required. So now I directly proceed to the central force motion. Central force motion, it has three properties. The first one, it takes place in a plane. It is conservative. Conservative means, what does it imply, conservative? What does it mean by conservative? Speak out, otherwise it will be just like a robot I am speaking to myself. Can you hear me?
Sir, a conservative force is a force in which a work done to move a particle between 2 points is independent of the path taken.
Conservative system is where the energy is conserved where the energy is conserved. So speak out. Once I ask, then you should speak out. Otherwise, it appears like I am speaking to myself. And the third one is radial velocity is a constant. Okay, rate of slip of area, this is constant. So these are the three properties, and all of them can be proved. Central force motion means the force is always directed towards the center of attraction. This is the center of attraction. And some particle of mass m is moving. This is the r direction, radius vector, and tangent to the trajectory, this is the v direction. So for this case, the moment can be defined as r cross s. R cross f, because here in this case, this is directed along the minus er direction. Er is the unit vector along the radius vector. So we can write it here in this way. And therefore, this quantity is equal to 0. And this implies the angular momentum H is a constant. This is a constant vector. And from where we are getting this, we can use this equation to prove it. This quantity can be written like this. If you differentiate, you can check that one term here will get eliminated. dr by dt and is nothing but v. So one term will be getting eliminated and this term will be stay. So this can be written here in this way. Okay. And from this place we know this quantity is 0, m equal to 0. So set it to 0 and r cross mv. This is a constant. This you can write as h, or r cross v, we can write this as small h. So this is called the specific angular momentum. So what does this imply? That the angular velocity here, this is a radius vector and this is the velocity vector. So angular momentum is always perpendicular to this. R cross V, which will be perpendicular to both R and V. And because H is a fixed vector, so that means R and V will be always lying in a plane perpendicular to this x vector. This simply implies that R and V are always constrained to the same plane, means it's a planar motion. Got the point?
Yes, sir.
The second one is the property. The second property we have written, the conservative one, central force motion is conservative. So this is the, you can take it along arbitrary path, and work done will be the same. The total energy remains conserved here in this case. There are infinite number of paths you can take from RA to RB, but the work done will be the same always. This is the point O, the center of attraction. So work done in taking the object from a particle from point A to B, this can be written as Fr dot dr. This is the work done by the gravitational force. The work done by the gravitational force will have opposite sign as compared to the work done by the external agent. And in general, we define the work done by the external agent as the potential. So here in this case, if I am writing WAV, so I will write here in terms of the gravitational one, and then we will take care of the sign later on. So here Fr, this is Fr. Over R there is no vector, this is just Fr. With minus sign it will come, but if it is attractive, if it is non-attractive, repulsive, so there will be a plus sign. So we will not put any sign here. This implies that it can be either plus or it can be minus. Repulsive is also central force motion, attractive is also central force motion. And then let us write this in this way. Therefore, F dot dr, this becomes Fr now we will use this differentiation and this is also equal to d times r square and therefore dr dot r, this is nothing but r dr. So we are going to replace here in this equation and Fr is replaced by n dot dr. So this becomes Fr and r dot dr. We get everything. This is r dot dr. On this side, this is r dot dr. So r dot dr we replace in terms of r dr divided by r, and this limit then will be replaced by the scalar quantity RA RB. So this is Fr dr. And this WAV FRDR we define in terms of, because this is a function of just R, so we can write this as the DUR, with a minus sign. And what is the reason for doing this? The reason is very simple, that the external work done by the system, this gets stored as the potential energy of the system. So we define in terms of that. Here in this case, the gravitational force itself is working. Okay, therefore it will be just opposite in sign to that of the external force. So therefore the work done, WAG, will be defined like this. And once we integrate it, WAG, so this appears as QR with minus sign, RA2. So this is UA minus URB plus RA. This is UA minus URB. Now the same thing we can also work in terms of the kinetic energy. So FRDR we can indicate in terms of what is the velocity change. So we will do it next time. And then we will show that the total energy system is conserved. Total energy here consists of the kinetic energy and the potential energy. So this is the potential energy change in going from point A to point B, and what is the kinetic energy change, and then we equate. So we leave the rest of the things to the next time. If you have any question, you can ask me. Otherwise, I take the attendance.